here within a couple of minutes. I'd like to welcome you all. My name is Diane McCreary, representing the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce. We're hosting this All Candidates Forum. We acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Ucluelet and are connected to the land and waters, and express our gratitude for their stewardship through the generations. May we collaborate in the spirit of respect. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to attend the All Candidates Forum this evening. Also, welcome to those attending on Zoom. This is your opportunity to meet and hear from candidates who have put their names forward for the position of Councillor for the District of Ucluelet. Candidates are Todd Evalina. You could maybe just, I'm sure everyone knows you. Myles Morrison, Trevor Jones, and Mako Noel, who is not able to be here. He will return on June the 18th, 10 days before the election on June 28th. I have a message from Mako that I will just read. He said, "While I understand the importance of being visible and accessible during the campaign, I also believe in showing up fully when I commit to something, and I wouldn't be able to do that from the road." He's on a road trip, I believe, so I do remain open and available for other opportunities to connect with the community, and I trust there will be more chances for meaningful dialogue throughout this election. Our moderator this evening is Geoff Johnson. Timing lights are operated by board member Jody Thompson. Written questions at the door. If you have a question, Sandy will take that question. Refreshments are courtesy of Judy Gray, Remax Realty. And thank you to the District Parks and Rec for the use of this George Fraser room. Any food or drink should be had outside in the hall, or I will get in trouble if you bring it in here. Thank you all for attending, and now I will hand over to our moderator, Geoff Johnson.
All right. My name is Geoff. Doesn't really matter. I'm just here to moderate and to help make sure that these candidates have equal time and have an opportunity to respond to all the questions in the way that can be clear and useful to everyone. So here's the basic fundamental plan about what we're going to do here. Each of the candidates in the order that was randomly selected by drawing numbers will start with a 5-minute opening, up to 5 minutes. You can cut it off early if you want, opening statement. That light will be green when you begin your statement. The timer will turn it yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining to give you suitable time to summarize or wrap up your thing. If you want to finish before that 5 minutes, go nuts. After the initial introductory, introductions, we'll switch to questions. We have questions that have been provided in advance, some general questions that were put together by the organizers of this event, and we will be taking questions throughout in the form of the written questions at the back. Questions will be vetted for a variety of reasons, sometimes because they're too similar to a question that's already been asked or will be asked, sometimes because they may specifically single out one candidate in a way that isn't appropriate for this debate. We want these questions to be questions that everyone can answer and everyone has a meaningful response to. So asking a question that's specifically about one candidate is not the expectation here. If you have questions for candidates that are expressly about themselves or in that sense, that don't apply to the other candidates, you can reach out to them directly through their own social media platforms, emails, or other ways in the street. Probably it's a small town. So think about that when you are putting your questions together. We're also not here to boo anyone or scoff necessarily. I mean, we're going to have, maybe there'll be something you'll have a subconscious reaction to, but that's not what this is about. We're here to listen and try to understand how these candidates are going to devote their energies to serve our community. That's ultimately what they're hoping to do, and we're hoping that whoever's elected will be able to do to the best of their ability. So let's keep that in mind while we listen to what these three candidates have to offer. As I mentioned, we have 5 minutes from each one, starting at the end with Trevor Jones. End to me, number one on the far left there. Yes. It'll be the same order that we're going to start with. Every question will come across, unless we want to have it go this way and then go back and forth and always like move to the next person. I don't know. We can do that as well. Let's do that. We're making it up as we go. So the first question after the introductions, we'll actually have the first question will be posed to Todd first, and then the second question will go to Myles first, and then we'll go around. That sounds great. Good question. First with the introductory questions is Trevor Jones. You have 5 minutes.
Great, thanks. Thank you for coming tonight. And sorry, this is as close as I was told to speak to it.
I'm just
loud. Thanks for coming, and it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Trevor Jones. I'm a family man. I've got a family of 5, 3 grown children. And I'm a retired scientist and businessman and administrator. I moved to Ucluelet in 2008 and took a job here working across the bay with the Ucluelet First Nation. I have a home on Edwards Place, and we run a licensed B&B, my partner and I, Penny. Penny is a avid pickleball lover and one of the board members on the Ucluelet Racket Sports Club. She volunteers at the food bank, Ukee Days, and the Edge to Edge Marathon. I've served on the Tourism Ucluelet board for 4 years, including, I think, a stint dressing up as a gray whale attending a Montreal Impact game in Montreal, in the stand making a fool of myself, promoting folks in Quebec to travel to Ucluelet. I've volunteered at the Ucluelet Racket Sports Club for the last 2 years, and I host one of the co-hosts for the drop-in night at the high school, playing pickleball. I also am one of the founding members to organize the annual Total Fluke pickleball tournament, of which we just had our second tournament this year, which attracts about, this year it attracted 36 teams from across the island and brings a little economic bump to the community, and we'll be doing that again next year. I am a proud grandfather of 3.75 kids, so that 0.25 is going to happen this month, and we should be seeing 4 kids. My 3 grown children all spent time in Ucluelet in their university years, all working in the community, probably for about 5 or 6 years in various businesses, working in electrical trade and BlackRock and the Blue Room, and loving this town, and still come and visit. They all live on Vancouver Island. I have previously worked as a volunteer fireman. I think the last stint I did was for 6 years with the Ucluelet First Nation, 2 of which were served as the deputy chief there. I'm currently the shop steward for the Allied Transit Workers Union here at the Forbes Road Local. I'm the first driver hired by BC Transit, so I've also got seniority there. It's one of the ways I serve the community. I've always been a firm believer that we need to transit here, and I've been actively driving for this community for the last year and 2 months, 3 months. I love it. I'm doing it as a part-time driver, but it's a great way to get out and meet the community. I'm also spent 5 years driving the elementary school bus for the kids. I kind of got hired on in the downturn of the COVID era when our B&B business took a hit like everybody else's businesses in town. And they were desperately looking for risk-taking drivers who would be willing to drive basically a test tube down the road with 60 unoculated children. I think I've had every variant of the COVID virus as a result, but I'm fine now. But it was a great experience. I love it. I'm still doing it. I hope to do it for a few more years. I want to continue to serve the community, and I felt I could do that best now at the council level. I've had a number of people in town approach me when Ian stepped down and this by-election was created. Folks that have come to know me over the last 17 years and have seen some of my skill set, but also know I've got some time. And so I was really moved that folks had asked me to run, so I gave that some careful consideration. Penny and I sat down and we thought, yeah, why not give it a shot? So I have over 20 years of senior management experience now in 3 West Coast communities, principally New Chalmouth communities. So the Hoopachesset First Nation for 7 years as their chief administrative officer, for 6 years with the Ucluelet First Nation, heading up their Ucluelet Development Corporation, and then another 2.5 years working for the Hoos Business Corporation out of Tofino for the House It Hot Wheel. I have time, and I have numerous experience developing economic development projects, also social housing. I've built a number of social housing units, principally in Port Alberni, and community infrastructure as well. I've been the project lead on sewer and water projects, so I understand what it takes to build a community. I'm really excited to perhaps now be your representative on council. And I want everyone to know that I'm here for everyone. I want to hear anybody's issues. I want to be a voice for everybody as much as I can, and I look forward to perhaps getting your vote. Thanks.
All right. Next candidate, Todd Evalina.
Hey, folks. I'm Todd Evalina. Some of you might not know me. I'm a bit of a newcomer compared to the pedigree of the folks running in this election with me. I'd like to open and thank the Ucluelet, whose lands we're gathering on tonight. And a little story to think about why this place matters to me is I was married to my spouse about 200 meters from here. And when we got married, we found an artist named Ivan Thomas, and this wedding ring is something I wear every day. And when we were getting it made, he told me that in addition to being C-Shot, he is Ucluelet as well. And I just wanted to share that story because land acknowledgements are said a lot, and they don't often get followed with the action and the activity that is going to be dedicated to reconciliation. And I wanted to start by saying I'm someone who puts a lot of intention into the things that I do. And I value dollars being spent in this community, investing in the people around us, and ensuring that there is a better future for the next 7 generations. I want to thank the candidates who showed up here today. I think it takes a lot of energy and effort and bravery to stand in front of a group and talk about what you believe in. And I'd like to share that I bring a fresh perspective. I have a lot of experience on a global stage before coming here, and I don't say that because I have any ego. I say that because I've worked in other places and I bring a perspective that a lot of folks might not have or see. In 2019, I traveled the world studying well-being, thinking about food, thinking about activities, thinking about how people connect with one another. I traveled to Seoul, to mainland China, and talked to people, and there's so many things that bring us together as societies, communities, and shared common values. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with Ucluelet? We're not China. And we're not. We're not. We have a lot of folks from all over the world, and I don't think it's something that should be used against you as a candidate to be new here. I ask myself the question, how long do you have to be somewhere before you can be part of community and stand up and make it a better place for everyone? And I started that on the first day I arrived here. I joined my first nonprofit within the first 3 months I was here. My experience ranges technology, brand building, community building, and volunteer experience with a lot of organizations in town here. I spent a lot of time working with Canada's government on maternal, newborn, and child health programs to ensure that there are better outcomes for Canadians, as well as global programs that are funded by Canadian dollars. I worked for the President's Emergency Fund for AIDS relief, understanding data related to building, related to computer systems, related to interventions that are done at a clinic, thinking about clinics that only have computers that were designed 20 years ago and the limitations that they work under. So I have a lot of experience looking at people from different backgrounds, oftentimes interviewing people in different languages like Swahili or French or Mandarin, in languages that I don't speak, and finding ways to communicate and find common values so that I can represent their voices. I'm here to talk about issues. I've been knocking on a lot of doors, talking to a lot of people, and the days, weeks, months, years that preceded this, a lot of folks will remember me from standing in this council and speaking on behalf of those who don't have the privilege or the time to show up. And that's what I'm going to bring. A lot of folks have shared with me that they're a little bit frustrated with some of the bickering that happens in this room. I don't blame anyone. We all do the best with what we have when we have it. But I've noticed that there could be a little less big man talking and a little more facilitation between what council is doing and what district staff are doing. And I want to be a facilitator that supports that collaboration, that working together for outcomes that drive this community forward. Because that's essentially what it comes down to, is time. And I want to earn your vote. And I'm glad that you're all here. I'll cut myself off a little early because I want to make time for all those valuable questions. So thank you.
That was Todd Evalina. Third candidate is Myles Morrison. He has 5 minutes.
I even set my timer. Well, this is amazing. Often I thought there wouldn't be anybody. So here we are, these great candidates. And you know what? Mako could have been hanging over us like the Wizard of Oz. You know, like he's silly to have not taken that opportunity. Well, just some of the things, the hospital, we had 3 kids born at the hospital, and I've been having the managers promise me that they would get birthing back in there, one manager after another. At least they got the heliport back in. But for myself, we've been here 35 years. 6 kids and now 2 brand new grandkids. As far as handling things, well, I just ran your provincial election and your federal election, and they went great, and that's because of you and the town and everybody. We did amazing. The numbers were impressive for across the country. So I can do big things. I was in the finance industry on Bay Street and First Canadian Place through the 80s, so that meant I went through the 87 crash, and you can imagine what that was like. And as an aside, I won every court case that got thrown at me or that I had to. I can get closer. Thank you. Yep. Thanks for mentioning it. So that's the finance industry. You know, I was dealing with presidents and corporations and big stuff all the time. I rewrote the manual for the holistic resource management organization. This is maybe 20 years ago. I've been the restorative justice coordinator for this area for a long time, and was part of the repatriating the Japanese being allowed to be in Tofino. And as an aside there, I asked Josie, who's probably our most successful politician out here ever, how do you do it? And Marilyn probably knows. Josie said, people know I listen to them, like they know I'm listening. And I said, well, how's that go? Well, I don't always do what they want, but they know I'm listening. So you have to have good advisors. You have to listen to them, and then you still have to be yourself and make your own decision. And you can't know everything, but you have to have people you trust. And if you don't like something, get another set of advice from somewhere else. And then you have to be aware you can't win. You're going to be the target from both sides, no matter what you do. So what else? I'm partially responsible for this building being here. When there was a model for this over the years that I insisted go to Ukee Days every time when it was the original $30,000 was taken out to put a roof on the seaplane base. I insisted that it get put back. When everybody said it was impossible, I said, no, it isn't. So I was on the rec commission, I guess, I don't know for how many years. Mark, you were the chair of the rec commission back in those days, so she knows. What else? It's kind of endless. I suppose my main message is that no one person can know everything, and you have all your knowledge, but you have to be able to access better and more up-to-date and more knowledge, and then use that to continue with your goals. Like, just, I think we look better as a fishing village than a Florida tourist village. So, you know, as for the talk of people fighting over the bumps and the way everything was done, and like, I would like it to look perfect. It's great. We have benches. Have you ever walked across Comox or Courtney? There's none. No shade, no benches, no nothing. I did that with the dog, and it was ridiculous. We have benches, we have all those amazing garbage cans and all that. That's all great, but we don't want to look like Florida and a tourist trap. So, and it's hard. The people, talk about what they want. I also don't like pay parking. That's friendly Ucluelet, but pay us money to park your vehicle, and then when your relatives show up, they have to pay for their vehicle, or you got to, I don't know. This, what else? I'm probably forgetting a whole bunch of things. This is since yesterday. 3 different meetings with lawyers. There's a $10 million building that the lease had been 50% under for 20 years. They delegated me to take care of this. So I'm having to deal with lawyers, the leasee, the people that think they should continue to pay way under rate. The money that comes from this lease goes to charity and things. So I've been supporting that. I am moving a long-term relative into lockdown long-term care tomorrow afternoon at 1. And I was on the movie set in Tofino till 3:30 this morning. So I'm a little bit dingy. And, you're not an extra anymore. You're now background. And I actually was dealing with the 2 stars. It was like they actually had me out there. So I better stop talking. Oops. There, that'll remind me.
All right. So those were our introductory statements from the 3 candidates that are here. Obviously, there is a 4th candidate, Mako Noel, who is not present. And we don't really have a statement from him. But again, feel free to reach out to him if you have specific questions to that nature. Sorry? Yep. Fair. So we're going to move into the questions phase, and because Trevor did the introductory statements first, Todd will be the first to answer this question. And so, since you will be integrated into an existing council structure with other councillors and a mayor in place, what makes you feel you are going to be the best fit to work with the existing council structure? Starting with Todd, you have 2 minutes.
It's a good question. I loved reading Marilyn's bit in the Westerly this week. I like to think of it as less time to integrate and do the exact amount of work than 4 years that could be in a future term. So I think the expectations are high and the time is a lot shorter than you'd have in a full term. I come from an innovation background. And what makes me different is that I have to learn and unlearn things a lot more rapidly than a lot of people. My work, for the most part, is evaluating and monitoring whether projects, businesses, and initiatives perform on the standards and roadmaps that they're meant to. And I didn't know anything about squid DNA and how luciferase made longline fishing lures glow. And I spoke to a lovely entrepreneur by the name of Paige Whitehead from Courtney a few years ago and learned about how she is using this technology to make innovative products that can support fishing industries like ours. And you might say, why would you use that example? Well, I'm not a geneticist by trade, but I learned in very short time how to speak that language, how to integrate into that world, how to navigate and advocate for something that is very different than what I do on a daily basis. And that's only one of over 100 companies that I've supported and mentored and worked with over my time as a business person. And I think the issues of Ucluelet are very different than that, but that's the approach I would take. Look at the plans that are already in place, the budgets that we have, and look at ways that we can support those budgets with external funding or other initiatives that might move them forward into the next term. Thank you.
Myles, you have 2 minutes. What makes you the best qualified candidate to integrate with the existing council? Roughly.
Well, I've been here 35 years and seen it all, right? I don't know. I think any of the 4 candidates are looking great, so I'm quite impressed. But I'm also been thrown into things. Like I also started the Junior Rangers program, and because I'm still actually in the Army Reserves as a Canadian Ranger, I was the patrol commander out here for a long time, and you get things thrown at you in the military that are just like, now do it. This doesn't make any sense, but you make it happen. So I can make things happen. And why I'm the best, I don't know. I think we're all really good, so this is really impressive. I'm here because elections are important, and participating is what's important. I didn't get elected as mayor twice, and I didn't get elected as council, I think, 2 other times, but here I am. Thank you.
All right, Trevor, you have 2 minutes.
I just want to say I love this guy. I've never met you before, Myles, but wow. I think my experience, I've had to hit the ground and run in most of my professional placements where you're being hired and instantly have to work with an existing board who's been duly elected. So you learn quickly about the style of governance and personalities, and you have to listen really, really carefully. And then you have to be a team player, you have to be collaborative. And I've got a track record of collaboration, learning how to do trade-offs, finding that middle path, not always being so stubborn to win every argument, picking your battles, just knowing that you've got to be putting the community's best interests always in your heart and in your mind. I feel that that's what I can bring. I've got experience working with Marilyn before, at Tourism Ucluelet. I liked your style there. She's a great facilitator and a really good moderator, really is respectful of everyone's opinions. And I liked what I saw. I've met with Marilyn a number of times over the last couple of years to talk about what's happening in town. And I have a lot of time for her and for the existing council. I know Sean already. I've watched a lot of council meetings. So I don't think I'm going to have a problem getting involved right away. Thanks.
All right, so for our next question, Myles will be the first to answer. In working in municipal government, you will be interacting with other governments, provincial, federal, and of course our local First Nations neighbors. What experience do you have in that sort of intergovernmental relationship, specifically with our local First Nations?
Well, that's a good one for me to answer, because as the president of the Pacific Rim Art Society, probably think a lot more than anybody else, actually so long that they're forcing me to step aside. The new rules say you can't be it over a certain time. So that's why I would have time to do this. So as of next year, I will not be the president of the Pacific Rim Art Society. But as that, we got a grant and made a binder of how to talk to each of the First Nations, because they're all totally different, and what's good for one will be an insult to the other. So we have a binder, which is probably due to be updated, and you have to know you don't go to the chief, like any of them. That's a total insult to everybody else there. So, but it's different. You go to this person, or you write a letter first, or you ask to meet for lunch. They're completely different. So the only way around it is to actually know it, and it can change when they all change. It's like dealing with the RCMP that we have new everybody every 2 years. As a restorative justice, I have that problem with dealing with them too. And then as for governments and big corporations and things, I've done that forever. So it's just people. And you do need to don't undercut somebody by going to the wrong person first. And if you do, fix it. I guess that's enough.
All right, Trevor? I know you already alluded to it in your introduction.
Intergovernmental relations, it's sort of been a big part of my career. Don't want to keep belaboring that too much, but I was the Ucluelet First Nations rep for at least 6 years in numerous governmental negotiations. And I think what comes to top of mind is I assisted them in negotiating their treaty and some of the implementation of their Manus Treaty. So very familiar with intergovernmental relations, met with previous council members here and this local government numerous times on their behalf. I was also the negotiator in BC Hydro and represented the Crown Corps across BC in negotiations with assertive sovereign First Nations all over BC. So represented the Crown as their rep in those relationships. You have to build that respect and be patient, and I have that experience. And then, before that, I was the Aboriginal Affairs. Back then it was called Aboriginal Affairs. Now it's Indigenous Relations. I was the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs Ministerial Assistant. So I basically was his rep for the whole bureaucratic side of Aboriginal relations. And that was nothing but intergovernmental relations. So I feel like I've got a bunch of skills, particularly well suited to interacting and collaborating with our local First Nations across the Bay. I know a lot of those families, and I know the leadership really well. I have a lot of respect for those folks, and I feel like I can really contribute.
Thank you. Todd?
I think that and how you intend to work and how much respect you pay to folks that you're working with is really important. And my depth and experience working with the Ucluelet primarily and other nations is maybe not as extensive as others around this table. But what I know is going into a relationship with the expectation of an outcome is the wrong way to start it. And I would begin the opposite way, invite and follow the practice and the lead of those in the room that know more than I do, and try to create relationships from a place of trust and respect. And while that doesn't always work, and that good plans with the best intentions may not always follow through, I'm a really fast learner and someone who really respects the people and lands who were here before us. Also in language, I think I have a good ear for things of never to suppose ownership and speak about folks in a way that they wouldn't like, and never speak for folks when they're not in the room. And I come from a place of inclusion and ensuring that folks are invited into the room to speak for themselves. In the business world, that's how I do a lot of things. I've arranged a lot of multi-partner research relationships over multiple years and multiple millions of dollars, and have launched successful products with partners in the 10s and 20s. And everybody comes into situations with different ideas and different expectations. And it's really important to get those expectations on the table so that we can have a good, solid conversation about what we all want and what outcomes we want to achieve together.
Thank you, Todd. Our next question, Trevor will be the first to answer. Recently in Ucluelet, there was a surprising response to a pay parking proposal. What are your thoughts on pay parking in the district and that particular, let's say, fiasco?
Yeah, I don't know if I would describe it as a fiasco. I mean, I think, a government always doesn't get consultation right the first time, and it shows a government that's got some wisdom that pauses things to go back and do some more study and more communication. So I was proud of the fact that this council did that. They didn't just charge ahead. They could have. They have time in their mandate to do that. The little bit that I've learned, and since I've sort of been investigating it and had people approaching me, is not everybody's on the same side, and not everybody's on the same side of this issue. Certainly, the business owners I speak to on Main and Peninsula don't want pay parking, and I think there's a solution out there. I do. I think it's going to be a blend, but I think we need to do the consultation, complete the consultation round again, and we'll get it right. I have no doubt. And I've said before to others that having a parking problem is a good thing. I've seen towns that struggle to get cars to come into their towns. Well, we remember here in Ucluelet over the years that we didn't get the visitors. Tofino did, and really it's only in the last 15, 20 years we started to see traffic pick up in this town. And yeah, we've got a problem, but it's a good problem, and we can solve it. I have complete confidence in that.
Todd?
Oh, that was still on. I think pay parking is a bit of a red herring for a larger argument about how we fund the necessary upgrades of our infrastructure. And it is only one part of many things that we could do. And I think that I appreciate how the business community stood up and the council heard that objection. And I appreciate that there's a desire to seek additional ways to solve this problem. I think that there is public input that's necessary, And for instance, one of the things was it was only possible with a mobile phone. And if you think about the trouble we had last year with cellular coverage in town, there would be an entire population of people who wouldn't be able to access that app or pay. So that could result in tickets or just confusion at the least. I think there are ways to approach pay parking in a way that doesn't infuriate as many people as it did. For instance, if you look at smaller increments of 15 to 30 minutes in key areas, and I would disagree slightly. I think Main Street is a really interesting place to do a test case, as well as Helen. If you think about high centers where there is a necessary need for high turnover to stimulate business in those restaurants and galleries and places that people visit more frequently, what you can do with shorter trips is get smaller revenue that amounts to larger amounts, and it helps turn over those parking spaces so that more people can visit those businesses. And if we look at the ways that we can stimulate business and generate revenue for the district, there's a whole multitude of ways that we could tackle this problem. But it starts with communicating with residents and businesses so that we can get those ideas on the table. Thanks.
I did mention not being in favor of pay parking right off the bat. The only person, I didn't speak to businesses, I spoke to private people. And the only person that said anything in favor of paid parking was that person over there. Yes, you did. In a Facebook thing, you said, well, the businesses should appreciate this because it'll mean the cars moving. But then he's saying the opposite. So anyway, and I'm thinking, well, you did. No, nobody that I spoke to was in favor of it. Knowing the mess that happened in Tofino, and some of you must remember what happened to the original parking meters in Tofino. They got torn out by chains and pickup trucks and vandalized, and they gave up really quickly when it cost them over $200,000 in broken machinery immediately. So that's why they're using cell phones, and they don't have any. Try to find a pay station in Tofino. I think there's 2 that you can do physically, and they probably don't work half the time. So the whole thing is a mess. Don't do it. I don't blame staff going, look, we won't have to raise taxes. This is a safe, easy way. We'll get the tourists to pay for this. It doesn't work that way. I was writing articles for the newspapers. There was 3 at one point, and I happened to be in Tofino covering the new person that gave out the tickets. I forget the right word. And he was asked in both sides of the room, all right, who's paying for these tickets? And everybody was expecting, the tourists are paying 95%. It was 95% locals are paying these tickets. And so, do we want to fine ourselves? Do you want your relatives having to fight over what they're going to do with their car? Or you have to move yours onto the street so they can have the driveway? Anyway, no, we don't want pay parking.
All right, our next question, Todd will answer first. What are the main issues you feel are affecting local families, and how would you address them? It's hard to cram into 2 minutes, but...
Yeah, well, we can go rapid fire. I speak fast. The first one I mentioned in the opening remarks was a frustration with potentially how long it takes to move conversations and initiatives through council and the district. And my first thing that I heard from a lot of people was how they don't actually want to be in these council chambers because they feel like nothing happens. And I don't think that's true, because I've spent a lot more time here than a lot of people, and I think there's very hard, very well-intentioned work happening. But what I hear from a lot of folks is how frustrating that is to feel like this is a place where things stop moving. Secondly, what I've heard from families most predominantly is that they desire greater access to recreational spaces, indoor, outdoor spaces that already exist and maybe need improvements. There's a lot of buzz about the new skate facilities that are under construction. There's a lot of buzz about a pump track. There's a lot of buzz about pickleball courts. There's a lot of buzz about tennis courts that perhaps use some of that same space, and these intentional ways of thinking about it so that badminton players, volleyball players, pickleball players, and tennis players can use the same spaces. I would say that is the biggest one that I hear from folks, is how do we get our kids moving in safe and intentional ways, because there's a lack of third spaces, and left to our own devices, people might get bored. So I think that's a really great place to start. But when I knock on people's doors, they say, I want to get moving and do activities. Thanks.
Myles?
What was the question again?
What are the main issues you feel affect local families, and how would you address them?
Right. So it's not just recreation. Speaking of recreation, 10 years ago, I was really pushing for disc golf, and every time they had those things and you could write down on the poster, I was always putting down disc golf. And then one of the town planner came up to me in private, showed me their plan for a disc golf course, and I said, no, you don't understand. Disc golf, think of a golf course in yards, make it in feet. And then the Rotaries took it over, and it was amazing. And my mentor that got me into disc golf years ago says this is a really great course. So good for us. It's the fastest growing sport in the world. So
That's pickleball.
no, it's disc golf. And being on the rec commission for years, basically we're the rec commission is saying, what do you want to do? We'll do it, and if at all possible. So it's kind of up to you. It's like if you want to have floor hockey somewhere outside or whatever, or you have some idea, bring it to them. They're desperate for you to bring their ideas, and then if somebody signs up and goes to them, it'll happen. And as far as council and clogging things up, well, I think you should make a resolution to add 3 more councillors and put us on there, and things will fly. Go for it.
Trevor?
Okay, I think this is such an appropriate topic. Mainly just I've had to watch 2 of my children who have families move out of town for various reasons, which I think I'm gonna list, which I think really address what the main issues facing families are. Housing, affordable housing. And I think there's some really easy wins there that I'd love to sink my teeth into. And I've got experience building affordable housing in other communities. Medical services, everybody knows we need a better hospital with more services. We're getting our new medical center in town. Maybe that'll help a little bit, but I think we can go a lot further. And of course, we've got the Minister for Health living here now, and I know she's got her eyes set on the hospital in Tofino as well. So I think there's going to be some improvements coming. Daycare, affordable daycare. That was another big issue. Daycare spaces here are so hard to get. And when you can get them, they're usually not affordable. So this is another big deal for young families. I think what I'm seeing also is, up until just a year ago, moving young families around. Not everybody has a car. Well, you know what? We have BC Transit now, and kids ride free. I can't tell you how many kids I see getting on the bus. And I'm just so excited to be supporting that, because we're now connecting Tofino and Ucluelet at the youth level. Folks are little kids, 12 years old, are getting on the bus on a Friday, traveling down to Tofino, hanging out with their friends down there, and then coming back on the late bus, get home at 10:30. So this is important. And then more recreational amenities for sure. And but you know what? We've got nature here, and I keep telling people, man, we forget covered buildings. Get outside. We live in the most richest, awesome recreational reserve in the world. So get a surfboard. Get out there. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Myles will be the first to answer this question. If you could implement one big, bold idea for Ucluelet that might not be popular at first, but would significantly benefit the town in 10 years, what would it be?
Only one?
You got a bunch? Go nuts.
Well, first I have to just add that the Coastal Family Coalition was responsible for that bus happening, and I was part of that.
Well done.
And it costs $5 to go there, and if you're a senior, it's only $2. It's amazing, and it stops right at my door. But one big thing at one point I was pushing for this to be a place for smaller cruise ships to come in, but I've changed my mind on that. And then the Lady Rose was supposed to do the ferry to here, and that came really close. It was even here in the harbor, and that didn't happen. Now, Harbor Air has promised to do a flight from Ucluelet directly to Nanaimo, and I was so happy about that. And when it didn't happen, I called their head office, and they said, "No, we're putting that on hold." So I think that would be amazing. If there was just one thing that would be fun, if I could, and it was cheap too. It was cheaper than the flight from the airport. If you could walk down to the dock and get off a plane in Seattle, Victoria, Nanaimo, or whatever, they're already doing it to Tofino, but it's expensive and not a very good schedule. So they promised they'd do that, so I could work on that. Also a university here of some description, and we ought to fight them pulling out Vancouver Island University to throw in one other thing that I was just disgusted to hear that they're pulling that. Anyway, too many more one things.
Trevor.
Well, I love bold ideas, so it's a great question. I now have more than just one, but you've only given me a chance to talk about one. One that we've talked about before when I was with the Ucluelet First Nation looking at economic development opportunities and doing a lot of planning in that community, something that they've talked about for a long time, which I think would be such an amazing addition, is the development of a gondola that travels from the waterfront in Ucluelet over to Hitatsu, to their government building, and then up Mount Chamata or up Mount Ozard to a revolving restaurant up there. And I'm not kidding. This is possible. And I know business folks that have done similar ventures with First Nations in other parts of BC and the Yukon, and they definitely would get involved. So the money's there. I know the Ucluelet First Nation certainly had talked about that in previous years. I know they've talked to council here about it in previous years. So that's one of the big, bold ideas I'd love to champion. I also would like to say that I'd love to see that powered by a wind farm. And when I was with the Ucluelet, we had done all the feasibility for a wind farm up on Mount Chamata. And we've got feasibility there that they completed with wind speed data for 2 years that shows that you could put about a 12 megawatt wind farm up there pretty much out of sight of town. And that is on treaty land that they control. So this would be a phenomenal opportunity, and the province is also really supporting renewable energy projects between local municipalities and First Nations. So this is an area I've got expertise in. I'd love to get involved in that as well.
I love this question because it's the reason why I left housing off of the question about families. And I think that housing affects everyone, not just families. I think the most important, biggest, boldest idea we could do for the next 10 years is to create a housing authority. If people don't know what a housing authority is, it is a entity that you could determine the structure of that would be used to build housing in this community. And that is not at odds with the type of housing that we already have. It is a place to receive assets that could be managed and distributed so that essential workers, that healthcare workers, that early childhood educators and tourism hospitality workers could use and could receive fairly. I think that establishing this entity could create a place for us to address the issue of housing, not to make this a place where everyone can go and everyone can live because it's simply a desirable place and not everybody can live here. But if we had an entity to say work with ARIF and receive the assets that their nonprofit is setting up, we can work with developers and industry to create the most needed resource that we have in this town. And I do not understand why this has not been created yet. Tofino has one. We could work with them if they're amicable to it so that we're not starting these unnecessary citizen disagreements around the types of housing we build. We need to build balanced housing for everyone who is here and look at how we scale that housing as our community grows in line with the OCP. And that is the most important thing we need to address.
So Trevor will be the first to answer this question. I'm going to read it verbatim because it was provided by somebody in this room, and there's positions in it that I don't want necessarily people to think that it's my own words. Anyway, it is no secret that our district office is considered a difficult place to work. How will you work to improve our local office to be a positive and supportive workplace, both to retain current talent and attract skilled employees to our community? So Trevor, you're first.
I think that's an easy answer, and it's something that's motivated me to get involved. I've watched what's happened in the district office. I've talked to lots of employees and citizens. Really, we just need a very strong leader who is prepared to commit to the community and be here for a while. You know, we're in the process right now of looking for a new CAO. That is the key person, and that is the leader for all of management staff, that liaising with all the union staff, and creating that esprit de corps, that civil service that we all want, and to be effective and working together on the same page. That starts at that level, and we've just been missing that key person for a number of years. And that key person isn't just a body; it's someone who's got that talent, that skill, those leadership skills, that proven ability. I look really forward to getting involved in that hiring process if I'm elected, and I have got experience looking for people, doing those headhunts, and finding really good people. Any job I've ever had, and the only time I've ever been able to leave it with my head held high was if I found my replacement. So every time I wanted to move on, I had to find someone to replace me, and that gave me a great chance to do that, be part of those processes. So I think that's what it's all about, really.
Todd?
I'll take the option to respectfully disagree with that one. And I think that in any workplace where you step in and you notice that there's a lack of psychological safety, dropping in as a big man boss, trying to drop the hammer on everybody doesn't work. That's how you have attrition in a workplace. I have a lot of experience leading large teams, creating psychological safety, and building up from a place where people come to work and feel like they're valued and respected. And I don't think it's council's job to dictate what district staff do. That is a collaboration, that's a partnership, that is a relationship built upon respect. And who we have in these roles are already skillful people. We can find people when they leave, or if they are not hitting performance, and that is noted and developed, we can work to find new folks to fill those roles. But I think we start in a place of building people up instead of breaking them down, and making it a place where they want to show up for work, where they're supported to do their best work, as opposed to reprimanded and made feel like they're not doing their job in the conversations that happen right here. I don't think it's fair to attack one another in places where they can't defend themselves. And I would call upon all parties to do that in a respectful way, so that we build up that trust and start working together to generate momentum for the people of this district.
Myles?
That's interesting that came up, because I am the coordinator of the West Coast Restorative Justice Service, and that's the kind of thing that we do. It's not just violent, contentious issues. It's dealing with anything. It can be a celebration, or it can be working out a board that's dysfunctional, and you have ways and means of doing things. So I'm an instructor in community justice forums and in peacemaking circles, and that's what I do. That's sort of one of the different things that I do that's the most, if I had a job in particular other than the military and everything else. And I've been the one that's been hiring people for the Pacific Rim Art Society, and look how great that's going. I'm on the hiring committee for that, and lots of other places. But there are ways to do things. You need to make an organization have a feeling of openness so that they can say what's bugging them without it becoming a knife shoved down your throat. So when I'm dealing with military exercises and things, they have debriefing sessions. It's called after action reviews. And a lot of the time, if you say anything, you're going to get it. Like, you just don't. And that's improved a whole bunch in our military. You might be happy to know. But that's the kind of thing that I deal with anyway. There's ways around that. It takes time. You can't just automatically go, whack, we're going to all talk to each other wide open and let, not hide anything. We're not going to say we're not going to mention that I've been bullied by that person forever or whatever. It's like, how is it feeling for you in the workplace? But you might not get to that until you just get everybody comfortable in the room. That's sort of the restorative justice techniques, but I have lots to say on that sort of issue.
Thank you. We're about halfway through. It's 7 o'clock right now. If any of you gentlemen would like to have a short recess, we can do that. If you're all happy to continue, we can keep carrying on. Obviously, you folks are welcome to go and get a refreshment and go to the washroom in the middle of it. But yeah,
I'd just love to get some more water.
okay. Let's have like a 2-minute recess to fill up some water cups and run to the washroom. Be back 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Boss man says 5 minutes. He's the lawyer. I don't know. Yeah, we'll be back in 5, friends. Since the candidates are ready and it seems like everyone else is kind of officially organized is back. Welcome back from our short recess. Thanks, everybody. Just a reminder, only water in here. If you have a snack and it's in your mouth, swallow it, but no coffees or whatever in here. We don't want Diane getting in trouble. So we left off. Trevor answered the last question. So Todd, we'll start with this one, and it actually came through our live feed. Councillor Anderson constantly uses the phrase "end of life" to describe some of our historical and recreational buildings, Sea Hall and the Seaplane Base Rec Hall. What are your thoughts on restoring, maintaining, or replacing these buildings? Todd.
First and foremost, I'd look at the inventory that we have and the budget that we have in front of us. And I spoke rather strongly about the need for recreational spaces and the community sentiment around which spaces to build. And I think that there's an opportunity in the Parks and Rec survey that was already started and has concluded in analyzing these data that have been gathered to understand what the community is looking for and where they feel that there are gaps. That's only part of the problem and solution. Looking at the inventory of assets we have around the community and actually specifying where in their end of life or where in their meaningful life we are, and then making decisions based on these data. So there's already a plan in the Parks and Recs roadmap to replace the Seaplane Base Hall. And I think there's an opportunity to integrate some of the feedback that the community's been getting. I could make a number of guesses as to which activities to support there, but being a place where there's already a range of activities, I think there's an opportunity to ensure that there's customization or multi-use capabilities. So I would say for assets that are nearing end of life, we look at the actual cost to replacement or the cost to retrofit or repair and make these decisions based on the budgets that we have and the budgets that we might have to go after. And then also make a concerted effort to go after provincial and federal funding, working in harmony with our partners who also value these things. And I really think that's something that we have a broad range of opportunities to look at because there's funding everywhere. Maybe not as we enter a recession, but there's a lot of stones that have been left uncovered. Yeah.
Well, that's fun. The Seaplane Base has been supposed to have been torn down 10 times since I moved here. The east wall was completely rotted out, so it got replaced. The roof was screwed, it got replaced. The rafters up where Praz used to store all their stuff, the Lions, I was also the president of the Lions a bunch of times too when we had a Lions organization here. There's a zillion things I haven't told you or anybody about myself, but the Lions had all their stuff up in the rafters there, and there was an apartment above Seaplane Base that the caretaker lived in. Why bump him out of there? I think there was some regulation about it needed another staircase or something. Like, it's just unfortunate. But that's been supposed to have been torn down I don't know how many times. And no, don't tear it down, fix it. Like, it's been fixed before. And yes, sometimes it costs more to fix something. You know how important that building is historically. Like, that's there because of the Air Force base that was there. And then the UAC Hall is interesting. It's in better shape than it looks. There used to be windows on the high school side, and it was a pleasant place, and then somebody cheaped out and put the vinyl siding over it. It's been done more than twice, and it just looks awful. Put the windows back in, get rid of the cowboy interior that I was so against happening, but what could I say? I wasn't the president of the Lions Club at the time. I was just the vice president, and that got uglified beyond belief. But still, that's the best sounding room. I toured the Eastern Canada as a touring musician, and I was the band leader and manager, and there's a whole other bunch of stories there. Try to manage a band through the disco era, I did, playing rock and blues. That building sounds amazing. It's exactly the right shape. The recordings that I've done in there always come out great. It's got a real stage. There used to be seating. The chairs went under the stage. That was cheaper to block that off. Lots of stupid stuff that can get redone. That's an amazing building, and I would say both of them. Enough.
Thank you, Trevor.
I love learning all this stuff. It's so good. Well, I'm really thankful Sean asked that question because he knows I've met with him numerous times over coffees to talk about this. The Seaplane Base Hall, I just want to start there. You know, I know it's had an engineering review and it's at its end of life, but the way I rationalize it is, you know, there are a lot of changing priorities for this town as far as capital projects. And we do have a 5-year, 10-year capital plan that gets updated. I'm aware of that. We have to stick to the plan because that's how governments work. That's how we get funded. That's how we raise taxes. That's how we plan. That said, emergencies come along and they end up being new priorities. Water and sewer. From my understand, we've got some big issues on both of those fronts that are going to require attention. Probably key areas that we need to continue to improve. They're probably going to get bumped above a new multi-purpose recreational facility, be my guess. But with that in mind, I know for a fact, because we visited the Seaplane Base Hall with some contractors a year and a half ago and put a grant application in to actually renovate it, put new windows, doors, lights, get the bathrooms working. We're only looking at $140,000 to do that. And I always told my kids, look, you get a secondhand car and keep fixing it, keep it working. You can't afford a brand new car right now. You can't be making $1,000 monthly payments on a brand new car. Get your used car and keep it working. Well, we've got a great old building. Let's keep it working. So I'm all for going after some grant monies. I think there's definite sources there. I need a council here that's supportive, and I think we do pretty much have that. So I know Maryland's supportive at some level there. So I'd love to see the next year those bathrooms reinstated, a pump out system with a septic tank facility there, and new windows and new doors. And we can refinish the floor. Man, that thing's going to have at least another 20 years.
All right, thank you. Myles will be answering this next question, but before we get into it, I'm just going to tell you all we're getting housing-y for the next little while. There will be probably a series of questions related to housing, slightly different aspects of it, so try to stick, or it's probably in your interest, to stick close to the specific response to these questions, as some of the other housing-related issues will probably be addressed in a follow-up question. So first off, do you have, Myles, starting with you, do you have specific thoughts for or against any of the major real estate developments that are proposed or underway right now?
Whoa. Just very confusing preamble he gave there. I'll ignore it. The one out at where the sewer lagoons are, like everybody probably knows, it was supposed to be some insane number of doors. So the real estate developers call it doors. They don't say specific things. And they were going to widen the road in there, which is impossible because there's a cliff on either side. But they were supposed to put back the causeway that was never supposed to be a causeway. That's supposed to be an island, like the lagoon that they've made there by not replacing that 30 years ago when they promised they would, the forestry company. Anyway, housing. The town forced one of the developers to do an upper-lower duplex off of Helen. I forget, it's over Otters, one of those streets. They're all the same kind of names, fishes and trees. And it was an upper-lower duplex, and whatever you paid for it, that was it forever. It stayed that price. So there was no reason to go in there looking to flip it and make a lot of money. And they sold the two of them. I'm not sure where that's at now. But that looked great. It worked really well. People were ecstatic to be in there. So upper and lower was a bit different, but it worked really well. So there's lots of things that you can do. Taxes. In California, when you buy a house, the taxes that you pay stay that till the next person buys it. And then it triples or quadruples instead of going up every year. So that's a way that somebody can, maybe the finance department doesn't want to hear that, but that's a way that people can buy a house knowing they're not going to get chased out by taxes like it happened to everybody. Well, it's happening to everybody. My taxes are four times what they were when we bought our house now. But so there's lots of options that you can pursue.
Am I okay with the distance from the mic here? Is that okay? So this is a pretty big question, and it's fully loaded. I think the way I would answer it is from a pretty high level. I think, generally speaking, I'm for business and development into town if it meets our plan. So we have an official community plan. It's there for a reason. The town updates it every few years. Community folks come out, participate, meaningful participation. That plan gets updated. That's the vision. We got to stick to the vision. So as far as any developments within that vision, well, yeah, that's what we do. As a town, we've already said at some high level, yeah, we want housing here. So if a development fits that plan, well, that's the first step. Then does it fit the current zoning? That's the next level that the town gets to weigh in on that's reflected through the OCP. If the zoning has to change, they want more density, well, then they have to go through a rezoning application, which requires then most likely a public hearing where we all get to come out and let the council know whether we're supportive of it or not. If we're not supportive of a rezoning, then it's not going to happen most likely. We have to stick to the process. And it's not always comfortable and it's not always popular, but as governments, that's the tools we have, and they're there for a reason, and they've survived for probably 100 years in the province. And elections have been won and lost on various rezoning proposals. I've seen it happen. So it's not always a popular issue. Council's got to have a really good feel for the community sentiment. And I think there's a number of ways to gauge community sentiment beyond a public hearing. So that's something I'd like to bring to council is let's get more involved in a monthly survey that goes out to everybody through SurveyMonkey, and let's keep our hand on the pulse of the community far more intimately through that process. There's many different ways. So yeah, I'm for development, but it has to fit the plan.
I'll give a more detailed answer because I've been at a lot of the open houses and council discussions where these have been discussed, and I've seen Mako at a few of them as well. I think there's three that we could talk about just as an example. There's Arif, there's the Matterson property, and there's High Focus Island. And they each come with their complexities. And I think at a high level, we should be looking at the official community plan, and we should be only opening it up for changes when it gets us something strategic for the town. High Focus, for instance, I was really impressed by how Ukee came back with an infrastructure investment for widening Helen Road. If anyone was at the last council meeting, there was a lot of discussion about Helen Road. I would say a filibuster maybe even happened. And I think we can start more intelligently solving the infrastructure problems that our town has by looking at water, sewer, pedestrian sidewalks, and roads to get what we need in this town so we don't have to pay for all of it. That said, there was a lot of community opposition on High Focus, and I think that's valid. There are members in the audience who spoke about the ecology of the region, how sensitive it is, the sewage treatment there, and I think that it's not quite right, but I'm impressed how Acoustics came back with some options and a willingness to negotiate. Arif is interesting. I would add, I would want to see Jody talking more about the project. I think the CEO developers lose a lot of merit when they talk over the strong women on their teams. And I'm impressed by Jody's commitment to the Chamber of Commerce and a lot of the work they're doing. I don't think the project is perfect, but no project is. And personally, I think Matterson is potentially one of the best places for us to develop. It's centrally located, and we should get the density right to understand the costs. And I'll stop because there's a red light.
All right. So like I said, it was going to be housing-y. So we're going to, one of the other common housing questions came from the live stream as well. I'm going to cut off one sentence because it kind of leads you in the answer. But what's your stance on short-term rentals, and how do you plan to balance the housing for residents with the tourists? I guess, Trevor, you'd be first on this one.
Short-term rentals. Boy, that's another big issue in this town. I think short-term rentals are a necessary part of our housing stock. You know, they're here for a reason. This town, back when they were coming up with their tourism strategy in the 80s, 90s, after the Great War in the Woods and Clackwood, they made this transition and consciously to a tourism-based economy. And we didn't have Black Rocks then. And we had a couple small motels, and they'd often be sold out. So how do we bring more guests here? Well, it was through B&Bs and short-term rentals. And I met a number of people back in those days that had them and were operating, and that's just been part of the culture here. We have a number of places in town where that's a legal use, and it's a zoned legal use, and folks buy their homes with the knowledge that they can have this income generator. And oftentimes that's how a lot of young families get into their homes, is because of that additional revenue. I don't want to do anything to threaten that, ever. And I've seen a council here at times, some council members, who very flippantly cast a vote the other way and potentially cast a bunch of families out on the street. And I certainly never want to see that happen. And that also propelled me to step forward and run. So how do we balance the needs between tourists and residents? Well, that's up to this council to get right. And that's up to the community to input on. And that often then it means it has to be reflected in our OCP. So that OCP has to remain an adaptive live document that gets updated, and we get the balance on the housing needs right there. Honestly, that's it. It's that simple. And then, of course, it's enacted through zoning. And then the relationships we get with the development community and government to get the mix of housing right. I don't believe that housing for residents should all be on the backs of developers and this local government. We need to get senior levels of government involved to create some market-based housing needs options that allow us to get a range of inventory available. So yeah, I'd love to see that happen.
Thanks, Trevor. Todd?
I think the positive friction, I'll say, between tourism and residents in Ucluelet is a really interesting one. When I was speaking to folks about the possibility of running for council, I asked this question a lot, and I started talking about it in terms of four-season tourism. And I realized that even that one-line description set people off in a way I didn't expect. And there's something that we really enjoy about this sleepy town in the winter when nothing's open and it's cold and dark and we don't have places to gather as community. And that's cool. It's a little bit quieter, and some people would really feel the pain if we didn't have a down season. So I changed the language that I used when I spoke about that into balanced tourism growth. And I think that the OCP has good guidelines for this. Last year, earlier this year, there was a conversation about like how many more short-term rentals could we reasonably create, and what is the trade-off when new projects come online. And I agree with Trevor on this one. It's something that I had on my website the first day it launched is, we should not be taking away the ability for someone as an owner-occupied short-term rental to use that to generate an amount of revenue that helps their mortgage. I don't think we should only be developing that type of housing. I think we should hold that in a conversation and say, if someone does not have the means, the time to take on another job, they could potentially get into a smaller place, a 1, 2, 3 bedroom condo that facilitates their needs. And those are separate conversations. But I think we can have controlled tourism growth and look at hotels, boutique hotels, short-term rentals as a thing we need to balance and do that in a way that doesn't overwhelm the town, that doesn't put us in a situation where we suffer if our roadways or waterways are pinched the way they were with the Cameron Lakes fires. Yeah, thank you.
I keep distracting myself with what these fine gentlemen are saying. So I forget what the question is, but I'll just talk anyway. The first place I stayed when I got here was a bed and breakfast, and I ended up staying at Sandy Henry and Flo Henry's bed and breakfast. And Sandy Henry was working at the Coast Guard, so I learned all about all that stuff. Flo Henry ended up being on council, I think, before you probably, and she ran the Rec Commission for years. I've learned all of that stuff. They had do kids around town. They told me where to go, what to do, and Flo sent me up to Tofino just to see what my reaction would be. And so I came back and she said, "Yeah, I knew you'd like Ucluelet better." But anyway, bed and breakfasts are great. Like, I have no problem with them, and we have rules and regulations about all this stuff. The development, that's my house right there. They wanted to make the roads this wide instead of that wide. They wanted no sidewalk. And I think the council said yes. I was really annoyed. I won't swear. Like, no, the road is this wide because we made a law saying it needs to be that wide for safety. It stays that wide. No, just to fit in another bunch of... No, like, there's rules and regulations that we have that we've worked on for years, or they've worked on for years, council. And you really think hard about changing them. If you're supposed to have a sidewalk, then you have a sidewalk. And the bed and breakfast, no, don't let the town, Airbnb. Don't let the whole place become Airbnb, which isn't as big a threat in Ucluelet as it is in Tofino, but they're finally fighting it in Tofino, and people are really upset when they thought, I can buy this and I'll make millions of dollars a year. And no, you can't, because we're going to actually uphold the law that was there that you thought you could bypass. So we have to stick to our guns and keep this a town for people, not just tourists or cottages.
Thanks, Myles. So you've all alluded to it to some degree, but here's a full question from the audience to the effect of: how much weight will you give to our official community plan? What factors do you feel justify amending it? And how much weight will you give to community input for possible amendments? Todd, you'll open this one.
I like the official community plan. It's a great document, and there's a quote: "Planning is essential, but all plans are useless." And I don't think the OCP is useless, but I think that we can look at planning as, like Trevor said, a living document that's meant to be improved over time and grow as our needs change. And I would say there are instances where we should open it up and look at changes and modifications. And it's exactly what I said on a previous question. When it gets us something that we desperately need and the balance of that negotiation is worthwhile. So can we fund our infrastructure and reduce the burden of increasing taxes on residents? If we can do that, there are justifications of how we might want to open the OCP. I ended and stopped talking when I was talking about the Matterson property, but I think that's an interesting place where we could look at land value and servicing fees and think about if it's a necessary place where we could look at higher density. And I would want a lot of community input on that, and I would want to look at the additional sites in town that might be better used than Matterson. But if we think about density and growth and housing, people who critically need homes, like early childhood educators, we could find a best fit scenario and have that negotiation and get the things that we need in this town while making slight adjustments, but not throwing out the whole plan. Yeah, thank you.
Myles?
Oh, didn't I just answer this? It's like, what, the OCP? Okay. Yeah, it's developed by people getting their input, but I was just thinking while you were talking that how often you have the room over there and 5% of the population shows up and says, writes on authority. Why don't we have a delegation from council go to every organization there is with, all right, we're going to come and we'll talk to you about the OCP. Go to the school, the high school, like that's the future citizens. Perhaps, the student council. So like, just think of something else. Like it used to be the cable TV and the newspaper was the way to go. Not anymore. It's still there. And it used to be that Facebook was the way to go. I never catch any of the notices, even from my own organizations on Facebook. And it's like I'm missing my own meetings half the time. So you got to find out what's what and where things go, and then get the true feeling of what people really want. But you also have to make suggestions. With the junior rangers, every beginning of every year, you'd go, all right, what do you want to do this year? And they'd all go, I don't know. So it turns out you have to say, all right, here's the bunch of options. We're going to do a heliport here. We're going to do this and that. We're going to have stacked high rise of 90 stories. Which do you like? You have to actually make sensible suggestions and let them leaf through them, because they don't know. They're not experts at this stuff. So you have to help and find more ways to get more out there and generate the answers that you want to come back to you. Because yes, you don't want to say, this is our thing, we're forcing this on you. And you want to say, yes, it's yours, but if it was only 3% of the population that made the inputs, it's not really. So it needs work, but it's important, and stick to it, the OCP.
Yeah, I love this question. I think the OCP is the guiding document. It's the overarching guiding document that sets all the principles in play and motion. It does get updated every 5 years, so it is a living document. I think it's really dangerous to go down the road of amending an OCP partway through that process. People need to have confidence that that, here's the template for 5 years. That's not very long in the bigger time frame of a community's history. One of the things I'd love to see us do, and certainly the experience I bring, is doing land use plans with First Nations in all three communities I did on the West Coast. They're looking over thousands of hectares of land, not just a small municipality. And one of the things they did so well was community consultation. So I love your idea of getting out to the schools. That's what we did in those communities. We had elders committees, advisory committees established that really guided the principles in those documents and helped the community understand the important values and places. I'd love to see that here. We've got a wonderful seniors community that we can be tapping into. And then a number of different ways to go into the community and seek input beyond just one meeting in a rec hall. So I love this. I think there's really good examples out there. The other piece we're missing, is the Ucluelet First Nation and the treaty lands, because they come right up to the district boundary. My view is we need to be including the First Nation in the OCP. We need to be including their lands in our vision because they inevitably will be part of what we do. So their infrastructure will rub up against ours. Maybe we'll be sharing some water, sewer treatment. Their housing potential there is phenomenal. So we're never going to run out of land. It's really about how big we want to grow, where we want to grow, and they should be our partners from day one.
All right. Well, I guess it's up to you. If we're moving away from housing, we're going to move to some more open-ended questions. If people do have other questions, though, we've got about 30 minutes left in our scheduled thing, but we do have closing statements to slot in there, so we only have about 15 more minutes worth of question time. So if you had a question last minute, some of these I feel like have already been addressed, the ones that have been given. So I'm going to kind of leave things a little bit more open from here on out. So Myles, you'll be the first one to answer this question. What would you say is the most unrealized opportunity available to Ucluelet?
Some of you will remember when Timber Tonewood was here. They were making all the guitar tops for Fender and Gibson for around the world, and Gretsch too. And we let that slip away. The possibility to expand the industrial area here, and we have the best Wi-Fi. For a long time, we had better Wi-Fi than Vancouver because it came in here when it wasn't supposed to. There was a 20-year list of when we would get Wi-Fi, and we weren't even on it, but then things happened and we got it. So we have really good internet. So we could be supporting cottage industries and the industrial park, so that people have jobs here. Yes. Was that it? Was that what I answered? Okay.
I love that segue, Myles, because I'm a firm believer, and the people I've talked to really believe we need another mill back in town, and that mill should be all about value-added forestry, custom millworking, music wood. We have such an incredible resource in the forests that we now manage. I mean, that's not always been the case for those that remember. We have our community forest program here. The Ucluelet First Nation have their own forestry program as well. Well, those resources can be utilized in so many different unique ways in a sustainable fashion. So I'm all for that. I'd love to see that happen. And I know the community would like to see that. I think the other thing, though, is our fisheries. Holy, do you know how hard it is to find wild-caught fish anywhere in the world that you can eat? I can tell you right now, it's a rare disappearing thing. And we get sockeye. I just saw sockeye, an ad for sockeye online down at the local fish plant. We can go down and get wild fish. We should be celebrating that. We should be coming up with a bunch more value-added products in our fisheries, and we should be having a fish festival every year that invites the world, if we want them to come and when there's enough accommodation, but to come and experience this, because it doesn't exist anywhere else anymore. And I have friends from Vancouver that come here just to get fish. Well, they're not alone. It's for people from all over the world that want to access fresh fish. It just doesn't happen. So we're sitting on so much potential. So I say fisheries and forestry are the two big unrealized opportunities.
I'd agree with the statement about fish. This is not an advertisement for Neptune, but their smoked sable fish is ridiculously good. I think that our seaweed industry is so developed, underappreciated maybe. There's a reason why I have kelp on my arm and a postcard with kelp on it. I think it is one of the best opportunities for us to partner with Indigenous nations and work in a way that is not depleting land resources, or thinking long term about regenerative farming on land-based farms, but rather looking at different species of seaweed that grow very well, that are helpful to our oceans, and also really flexible for their sources of starches and sugars in ways that you can use for fertilizer, for food that we can eat to increase food security in this region so that we're future-proof for disaster scenarios. You can tell I'm passionate about this. I think that there are so many ways to bring what is a $130 billion industry, as quoted by Cascadia Seaweed, an island-based farming company. If you haven't heard of Cascadia Seaweed, look into them. Their closest outfit is Port Alberni. But we have an opportunity to create prosperity plans, to Myles's point, to have industry here, good, well-paying jobs that have a living wage, that are not depleting resources on this planet that we need, and grow really quickly and taste really delicious. And, this is not a bribe to vote for me, but I love making farfalle out of kelp, and I want you all to try it one day.
Thank you. All right, on the flip side of that, Trevor will start with answering this question. What would you say is the most overlooked issue facing Ucluelet?
Okay, I think there's a number. It's not just one, and it's certainly near and dear to my heart as far as concerns go, and it's water supply. And I think we have been so blessed with so much water for so long, and it's all around us. But really, if you look at climate change and what it's doing to precipitation patterns, I'm really worried about our freshwater supply, not only for the town, but for the future. So I believe it's one of the biggest issues that we're going to have to face. I think also access to this peninsula and the road, in and out, another, it's not overlooked. We've tried improvements, but there's only one way in and out of here. And I'd like to see, our marine side improved again. I'd like to see the airport continue down the road to improvement. It's gotten a lot better. I think the sewer treatment, I believe it's a bit of a time bomb that's just ticking away. My feeling is it's probably not going to meet our needs in the future. We're going to have to spend some money there, and I would guess that it's probably not really an effective tertiary level of treatment. I think it was designed perhaps that way, but I don't believe it's working that way. So it's something in an area that I really am interested in trying to shed some light on. And then just the bigger issue, 50 years, 100 years, is how many folks do we want coming here? Because if you look at some of the tourist hotspots in Europe and around the world, they're now regulating how many folks can come. Spain has taken this on, some other places in the Mediterranean. I think we're going to have to address this as combined communities, Tofino and Ucluelet, and get a handle on what does the future look like for the visitor rate here, and how are we going to manage that?
I agree with a lot of what Trevor said there, but to choose a different topic and bring it back to housing, I think there's sort of a keystone that housing unlocks, and I don't. She said this at council, so I don't think it would hurt to bring her voice into the room. But Jill McQuaid spoke earlier this year about the need for housing as a way to get folks out of potentially a bad situation. And because the cost of housing is so high here, say you were someone who was in a relationship where there was abuse and you sought resources from West Coast Resources, there are not a lot of options to get you into the next home that gets you out of a bad situation. And indirectly, what that does is it affects mental health. And while mental health is a provincial responsibility, what we can do is affect that keystone, which is housing, to ensure that when people are in a situation where they don't have options, their mental health does not suffer because we can't offer them a solution. And I think that we have a great roster of caring people and organizations in this region that are doing the good work, but they need a lot more resources. And I think that if we can save one life for someone who is going through any traumatic circumstance where they can get into a home or they can get out of a relationship that is causing them harm, or get them into a situation where their mental health can be supported and nurtured and re-regulated so that they can contribute to this community the way that they want to, I think we will have done our best work.
I'm also in the Masons, and I talked them into giving a grant to the second stage housing project. And 1 year, and then another year, I convinced the whole Ontario Masons group to give money to all the transition houses across the province. So it's just another thing. And the obvious, we had a mayor, his name starts with E, who was determined to not collect any taxes. So the sewer system is like 12 different things. Nothing matches anything else. That's why it's collapsing all the time. There was years and years and years where Mr. E.L. didn't upgrade it, and there was this kind of pipe going to that pipe in different sizes. It's still a mess. They're still dealing with it. I was just at the sewer lagoon recently doing a ranger's exercise. They didn't believe me that you could get down there and up the mountain where the CBC towers used to be for looking at observation posts and stuff. And they have expanded it, and there is room for 2 more expansions. But I know it works because when it doesn't work, I can smell it. The outfall comes out and goes around to where my house is, and it's been working fine for 20 years. 20 years ago, it didn't work a lot of the time, and they figured out a better way to percolate the stuff, and it's been working fine. So it's a weird septic system, and they have expanded it 3 or 4 times since I've been here, and there's room for 2 more big expansions. I don't know if it'll handle 2 more thousand people, which is if all the developments happen, that's how many more people would be here. Yeah, more. That's just like I think it's 1,500 doors. So never mind. The water. The big plan was always to go to tap Kennedy Lake. The problem is that can be salt water. It can come up the North Kennedy River and flood it with salt water. So it's like, how do you handle that? It only happens every few hundred years. But that was always the plan, to tap into that, and then lots of water for Tofino and Ucluelet. So the water's a problem. The junction thing was supposed to be endless. It's not. So both things need to be worked on.
Thanks so much. So we have one more question, and then we will go to the closing statements. So Trevor will be first to answer this question, and Todd will have a chance to be the first to offer the closing statements. This is a very practical question. Being on council takes a fair amount of time to attend council meetings and other meetings that you may have in your portfolio. How will you manage this with your personal life and other obligations?
It's a great question. I think I 30-something years ago, I ran for a council seat in Nanaimo, and it was a great experience. But I had a really young family. It was, I think, pretty naive of me to think I was going to have time, and it was asked of me there. And now, 30-something years later, I'm retired. I retired 7 years ago, and I started driving school bus mainly so I could leave my wife alone for a few hours a day. But now I love that, and I have time. I've got time, so I've got plenty of time, and that's one of the main reasons I decided to throw my hat in the ring. I've got time, and I've got experience. I've got passion for the community, and I guess I feel like I'm ready.
I have a very healthy relationship with therapy. I also have been at pretty much every council meeting for the last 3 to 4 years, and showed up at every open house and read the pre-packages while being an executive at a $12 billion company. And I woke up and took calls with partners in Germany led my team here in Canada remotely from Ucluelet, led team members on the East Coast and nurtured their psychological safety and supported their needs and led outcomes for that company, and then closed my day with calls with vendors in Asia. And I think it is maybe a lack of ambition that is placed on my generation with things like spending money on avocado toast. But I can tell you that I am a very hardworking person, and the reason why I own a home today is that I arrived in this province 22 years ago with only debt and ambition. And I think that that's a really good thing to have to support the people of this town. So if you think it's a lot of work, watch what I've accomplished.
I went to so many council meetings a long time ago that at one point the mayor would finish with, "All right, Mr. Public, what do you think?" That was when Bill Irving was the mayor. So I am stepping down as president of the Pacific Rim Art Society, which is quite onerous amount of work. So there'll be time for that. All the 6 kids have all moved out, although their grandkids are screaming for attention, and that's where Margaret, the wife, is right now. So there's one 6-week-old and a 8-week-old. But I do have time, and everything that I do, even of the restorative justice stuff, I schedule it at my time. Like if an arresting officer wants to do something, or whoever needs to do a counseling thing, or we're going to do a peacemaking circle, whatever, I have to be available first, and then other people. So I get to schedule everything for almost everything that I do. And I know how much work the councils and the stuff coming from all directions. It's not easy. It's amazing that you've been doing it this long. Thank you. So, yeah, I can handle it.
Thank you, Myles. So we have exactly 15 minutes left, which is great because each of the potential candidates here will have 5 minutes for closing statements. You don't have to use it all, but we're going to start with Todd, then Myles, and then Trevor, and then wrap up this debate. Thank you. Todd, go ahead.
I'm thankful for the folks beside me here that showed up to have this conversation. It was a lot of fun, and it's also raising a lot of topics in this community that I don't think get as much attention on a daily basis as they should. And I'm privileged to be a part of that, and the way that the folks beside me have surfaced their arguments to support what they would like to do. I think centering the community need is super important, and we can agree upon that desire for everyone who showed up today. I bring an innovative take, and I may not have the same Ukee credibility that the others running in this election have, but what I do bring is a fresh perspective on how to think our way out of unsolvable problems, and that's something I made a career out of. And sometimes a fresh perspective is needed. When we step away and we look at who's represented at the table and who's not, it's worth including someone who brings that take that might help us get through this next phase that's super important. And I don't think it's a vote against any of the fine people who've chosen to bravely put their name forward for this, but it is a vote for the ambition to take us that next step that gets us past these roadblocks that we're facing. It's going to take partnership with local nations. It's going to take partnership with the community and bringing voices forward that we haven't included in conversations. It's going to take asking who's missing from conversations so that we don't bring bylaws and motions forward that people feel left out of. It's about being proactive and ensuring that we've done our work in advance so that projects actually complete and everybody feels like they've won. That's the future that I believe in. And I think to build a thriving Ucluelet, we have to build that plan together. We have to do a little bit more work and put our intentions under a bit more scrutiny and maybe check the biases that we bring into the room with us. And I have my own, everyone else does too, but that's the way that I want to take this position on, and I'd love to earn your vote. So June 18th, get out there for advanced voting. June 28th, go out there for election day, but I'd love if I can earn your vote for District of Ucluelet Councillor. Thank you.
Way to go, baby. I always forget what I'm going to say listening to these guys, and I should know better because part of peacemaking circle or restorative justice practices have a notepad, like like Trevor does, and write down what you want to say so you don't forget in all the notes, and don't interrupt somebody that's speaking. Write it down, and when it's your turn, then speak. But anyway, one of the things that I thought of was, in Switzerland, you get fined if you don't vote. Can we do that municipally, like federally, or you get $10 off your taxes or something if you vote? It's like there's countries where it's a serious offense to not vote, and federally, provincially, and municipally, we should do something like that. It just wake people up. If they got something off their municipal taxes, maybe that'd be enough. It's not fining them. This is great. This is way more than I expected. So all the information flying around about all kinds of things. If you want, obviously, we're all open to any questions or from anybody that can be used at a later date for whatever. Even it's just if people talking about stuff, it doesn't matter if we're elected or not. We're all discussing the different issues and bring them to us, whether we're on the council or not. And the Wizard of Oz missed his chance to be up there, so vote for us.
I think something I learned from the Ucluelet is that when people speak before you, if you don't have anything to add, just be silent. So you guys have pretty much said it. I just want to say thank you. I've already said I've got the experience, I've got the time, and I think I've got the patience to be a functioning part of council. I believe that I can hit the ground and be part of a functioning council that's here already. I believe that we need to create more certainty for business in the community. We need to create a very, high-level functioning civil service, and that I believe starts with a really strong collective agreement for our union and our union members in town that deliver our services. So I really want to put a shout out to them. And then one of the biggest issues that I want to close with is that, folks, the fires are burning around us. BC is burning, Canada is burning, and we're going to be seeing more wildfire interface issues come close to us in the next 50 years. So I just want to say we got to make sure our fire department is well equipped, that they're bringing in more people to help, that our volunteers are maybe getting some paid there. We have to be prepared. We're very vulnerable, and our fire department is going to be our first line. So I just want to say, with climate change, it's real, it's happening, folks, and the biggest challenge on us in the short term are going to be wildfires. So, yeah, let's make sure we're ready for it, and give me a chance. Thanks.
All right. I'm going to pass things off to Diane in just a second, and she'll do all the official stuff because I don't have all the notes. But I just want to say thank you to Julian from Tofino InfoTech for handling all the technical stuff over there so that I was able to stay here and focus as a moderator. This meeting has been live streamed and will be available as a recording on UkeeTube, which I have no affiliation with, I promise. You should definitely, if you're there watching, definitely not go watch the new video I uploaded of the yacht race. That said, thank you so much for having me. I am generally an apolitical sort of person, but I love to take part in the process without necessarily sharing my position on it too publicly when I can. So it's a really great thing to kind of be able to sit here and be a hub and meet all these people and get filled in. I hope you enjoyed the process as well. Thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for putting this together. It was fairly last minute. And they nailed it, I think. So thanks to that. Thanks to people tuning in online and you all attending. And I personally would consider it a favor if you'd go out and vote on the 18th or the 28th to help see the future of Ucluelet in your image. Thanks. Diane from the Chamber of Commerce.
You said a lot of what I was going to say. I just wanted to thank everybody. I think this was a great, informative evening. I hope what you heard this evening will inform your voting. A few thanks are in order. Thank you, candidates, Trevor, Todd, Myles. Thank you to Geoff and Jody and Julian. We couldn't have done this without you. And Sandy for taking the extra questions. Thank you to the district for the facility, Judy for the refreshments, the great team. Hope you enjoy those when you leave here. And thanks to the Chamber Board for hosting. We thank you all for attending in person and on Zoom. And vote on the 18th and 28th. And that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you.